The Grand Assembly Hall stretched before Marcus's web like an ocean of alien life. 3 kilometers of polished black stone formed the floor, so perfectly reflective that the thousands of beings seated in the circular tiers appeared to float in an infinite void. Above the dome displayed the entire known galaxy in real time, stars pulsing with data streams that only the most advanced species could decode. 73 different civilizations filled the chamber, their forms as varied as imagination allowed. Crystalline entities that hummed with inner light, beings of pure energy contained within magnetic fields, creatures so massive they required entire sections of the hall, and others so small they existed only as swarms of consciousness at the center of it all. Standing in a perfect circle of white light that seemed designed to expose every flaw, stood one human. Marcus kept his hands clasped behind his back, his posture military straight despite the weight of 10,000 eyes. Sensors and awareness fields focused entirely on him. He wore a simple black suit, Earth-made, without the environmental shields or bio-enhancements that decorated every other delegate in the room. To the assembled powers of the galaxy, he must have looked primitive, fragile, breakable. That was exactly what Marcus wanted them to think. High Chancellor Vorn dominated the central throne, a being whose body seemed constructed from living metal that constantly flowed and reformed. His face shifted between expressions faster than human eyes could track, cycling through what Marcus assumed were the emotional displays of dozens of species. When Vorn spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority, reverberating through the chamber like thunder. Ambassador Marcus Webb of the planet Earth, Vorn intoned, and the translation devices embedded in the chamber walls rendered his words in thousands of languages simultaneously. You stand before the Galactic Council to answer for the crimes of your species. Unauthorized expansion into 17 systems. Militarization of your colonies in direct violation of the newcomer protocols established for all emerging civilizations. Refusal to submit your genetic database to the collective archive, a requirement for all spacefaring species. And most seriously, hostile actions toward Council survey vessels in what you claim as your territory. The charges hung in the air, like accusations carved in stone. Around the tiers, delegates leaned forward, eager to witness the judgment of this upstart species that had dared to challenge the established order. Marcus said nothing. He simply stood, waiting, his face calm. Vorn's metallic features settled into something resembling a frown. The evidence against your species is overwhelming. 7 council members have presented documentation of your violations. The penalties prescribed by galactic law are clear. Immediate cessation of all colonial activities, mandatory technology restrictions, supervised governance until such time as humanity demonstrates the capacity for civilized interaction with the galactic community. He paused, letting the words sink in. How does your species plead to these charges? The silence that followed felt alive, pressing against Marcus from all sides. This was the moment they expected him to bow, to beg for mercy, to accept the judgment of powers that had ruled the stars for millions of years while humanity was still learning to make fire. Marcus raised his head slowly. A slight smile crossed his face. Not fear, not submission. Something else entirely. Honored Chancellor, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, despite its human limitations. Before I address your charges, I have an accusation of my own to present to this council. The reaction was immediate. Murmurs rippled through the assembly like waves. Several delegates actually stood, their forms bristling with shock. Translation devices sparked as they struggled to process the unprecedented response. Vorn's flowing features froze mid-transformation, locked in an expression of pure disbelief. You have an accusation? Vorn's voice dropped to a dangerous register. Human, you are the one standing trial. You are accused. You do not accuse. Don't I? Marcus reached into his jacket with deliberate slowness, giving the security drones hovering at the chamber's edges no reason to consider him a threat. He withdrew a small data chip, holding it up so the light caught its surface. Because the evidence I am about to present will prove that Earth, humanity's homeworld, was invaded by multiple species currently seated in this chamber. That invasion occurred approximately 50,000 of your standard years ago. He paused, letting that number settle over the assembly. In that invasion, Marcus continued, his voice growing harder, never ended. The chamber erupted. Delegates leaped to their feet, their protests creating a cacophony that the translation systems could not fully process. Alarms began sounding. Security drones activated throughout the hall, their weapons charging as they converged on the humans standing in the light. Vorn slammed, his fist against the throne's armrest with a sound like a hammer striking an anvil. Silence. Security. Hold your positions. His voice cut through the chaos, reasserting control through sheer force of will. When the noise subsided to angry muttering, he turned his full attention back to Marcus. Human, you dare to accuse this council of invading your world? You dare to disrupt these proceedings with baseless claims? Baseless. Marcus held the data chip higher. I have proof. Archaeological evidence. Genetic analysis. Recovered technology that does not match humanity's natural development timeline. Biosignatures that match 3 species currently in this room. His eyes swept across the assembly, watching for reactions. I have documentation of a conspiracy that spans 50 millennia. A crime against my entire species that every member of your inner circle knows about. Several sections of the assembly went very quiet. Marcus noted which ones. Vorn's features began cycling rapidly, a sign of agitation that Marcus had learned to recognize. This is preposterous. The Council does not engage in primitive world manipulation. We have laws against interfering with pre-space flight civilizations. You do now, Marcus. Agreed. But 50,000 years ago? When my ancestors were still living in caves and your civilizations were already ancient? What laws protected us then? A delegate from the lower tiers, a being that resembled a collection of floating crystal shards, spoke up. Chancellor, perhaps we should see this evidence before dismissing the humans' claims. The evidence is clearly fabricated, another delegate interjected. This one from a species that looked like armored centipedes the size of buses. Humans are known to be creative storytellers. This is a delay tactic. Marcus kept his eyes on Vorn. If you are so certain the evidence is false, then let me present it. Let the Council see these fabrications and dismiss them publicly. Unless, of course, there is a reason you would prefer this information remain hidden. The challenge hung in the air between them. Vorn could refuse and appear to be hiding something. Or he could allow the presentation, confident that whatever this primitive human had discovered could be explained away or discredited. Vorn's features finally settled into an expression of cold certainty. Very well. Present your evidence, human. The Council will examine your claims and expose them for the desperate fabrications they are. But know this, when we are done, your penalties will be severe. Marcus allowed himself a small, genuine smile. I am counting on it. Right. He activated the data chip. In holographic projections, began filling the chamber with images that would change the galaxy forever. The holographic displays erupted throughout the chamber. 3-dimensional images materializing in the air above every tier of seats. Marcus watched as 73 different species looked up at the evidence he had spent 5 years compiling. Evidence that would shatter the carefully maintained facade of the Galactic Council. The first images showed Earth, not the Earth of today, with its gleaming orbital stations and bustling colonies, but Earth as it had been 50,000 years ago, primitive, untouched, beautiful. This is my world, Marcus said. His voice amplified throughout the chamber before first contact. Before we developed writing or agriculture or civilization, this is Earth when humans were just another animal species struggling to survive. The images shifted, showing archaeological sites, massive stone structures that predated known human civilization. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, with its precisely carved pillars arranged in perfect circles. The pyramids of Giza, their construction methods still debated by historians. Underwater ruins off the coasts of India and Japan, cities that sank beneath the waves during the last ice age. For centuries, my people wondered how our ancestors built these structures, Marcus continued. We created theories. Ancient, lost civilizations. Advanced prehistoric cultures. Visitors from the stars? He paused. It turns out the last theory was correct. The hologram zoomed in on the stone structures, revealing details invisible to the naked eye. Microscopic tool marks that no primitive instrument could have made. Crystalline inclusions in the rock that formed too perfectly to be natural. And most damning of all, faint energy signatures still detectable after 50 millennia. We found technology embedded in these sites, Marcus said, buried so deep that only our most advanced scanning equipment could detect it. Technology designed to last, to observe, to record. Technology that still functions to this day. New hologram appeared, this one showing a complex molecular structure. This is hum. In DNA, Marcus explained. The genetic code that defines my species? For years, scientists noted certain anomalies. Sudden leaps in complexity that evolution alone could not explain. Genes that appeared to be engineered rather than naturally selected. Genetic markers that suggested directed development. He gestured, and the DNA strand began highlighting specific sections in red. These modifications all occurred approximately 50,000 years ago. The same time period as those ancient structures, the same time period as the earliest evidence of advanced human behavior, language, art, complex tool use, abstract thought, all emerging within a geological instant. The murmuring in the chamber grew louder. Several delegates were conferring with their advisors, checking their own databases, running their own analyses. But the real proof, Marcus said, and his voice grew cold, came from Antarctica. The hologram shifted to show a massive ice cavern, clearly artificial, carved deep beneath the frozen continent. Inside the cavern sat 3 distinct structures, each one the size of a small building. Even in holographic form, their alien nature was obvious. Technology that humans could not have built. Technology that should not exist on Earth. We found this installation 18 months ago, Marcus said. It was buried under 2 miles of ice, in a location that required 3 months of drilling to reach. The structures are intact, functional, and they contain complete records of what was done to my world. He pulled up new data streams, technical readouts that filled the air with complex patterns. We performed biosignature analysis on the organic components found in the installation, genetic material left behind by whoever built this facility, and we compared those signatures to the database of all known galactic species. Marcus turned to face a specific section of the chamber where 3 groups of delegates sat. We found 3 matches. The Vril Collective, the Korthon Empire, and the Silicate Conclave. The chamber exploded into chaos again, but this time Marcus did not pause. His voice cut through the noise. 50,000 years ago, these 3 species came to my world. They found primitive humans living in small tribes, barely surviving the Ice Age, and they decided to conduct an experiment. They used genetic modification technology to accelerate our evolution. They built monitoring stations disguised as natural formations. They directed our development like gardeners cultivating a particularly interesting plant. A delegate from the Vril section attempted to interrupt, but Marcus spoke over them. They enhanced our cognitive abilities, improved our capacity for language and abstract thought, strengthened our immune systems and adaptive capabilities, all while watching from a distance, recording every change, every development, every step we took toward becoming a spacefaring civilization. He pulled up more data, streams of information that flowed like rivers across the holographic displays. And when we did finally reach the stars on our own, when we took our first steps into the galaxy, you were already there, waiting, watching, not to welcome us, but to control us. The newcomer protocols you speak of so proudly, they were never about protecting young civilizations. They were about containing us, about restricting what you had created before we became too powerful to manage. Vorn rose from his throne, his metallic form radiating authority. These accusations are serious, human. Do you have any idea what you are saying? You accuse 3 of the Council's founding members of crimes that would shatter interstellar law. I am saying exactly what happened, Marcus replied. And the three species I named cannot deny it, because the biosignature evidence is irrefutable. Their genetic material is literally embedded in that Antarctic installation. They left their fingerprints all over our world's history. For a long moment, silence reigned in the chamber. Then, slowly, a figure rose from the Vril section. The Vril delegate was a being of crystalline light, its form constantly shifting between solid and ethereal states. When it spoke, its voice carried a harmonic quality that the translators rendered as ancient and tired. "The human speaks truth," the Vril delegate said, and the chamber fell completely silent. 50,000 of your years ago, we came to Earth. We found a primitive species with promising cognitive potential. And yes, we interfered. We accelerated their development. It was part of a council-sanctioned research program. Council-sanctioned. A voice shouted from the lower tiers. "The Council has laws against genetic manipulation of primitive species." "We do now," the Vril delegate replied. "We did not then." Marcus seized the moment. "And when we became sentient? When we developed civilization and culture and art? When we became people rather than test subjects, what did you do then?" The Vril delegate did not answer. "You watched," Marcus said, his voice filled with quiet fury. "You watched us struggle through wars and plagues and disasters. You watched us nearly destroy ourselves a dozen times over, and you did nothing. Because to you, we were never people. We were an experiment, a project, a curiosity to be observed and controlled." Another figure rose, this one from the Korthon section. The Korthon were massive beings, reptilian in appearance, with scales that shimmered like polished armor. "The program was designed to test adaptive capability in hostile environments," the Korthon delegate rumbled. "Earth was classified as a death world. Harsh climate. Dangerous fauna. We wanted to see if cognitive enhancement could allow a species to thrive in such conditions." Marcus asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The Korthon delegate's eyes, large and golden, fixed on the human. "You exceeded them. By every measure, humans became the most successfully adaptive species in galactic history. But that success created complications." "Complications," Marcus repeated. "Is that what you call it when your test subjects develop faster than you anticipated? When they reach for the stars without your permission? When they refuse to bow to the very beings who made them what they are?" He turned back to Vorn. "That is why we were charged with violations, is it not? Not because we broke any legitimate laws, but because we refused to be controlled. Because we rejected the newcomer protocols that were specifically designed to limit our growth. Because we discovered the truth about what was done to us and dared to demand answers." Vorn's features cycled through a dozen expressions before settling on something resembling resignation. "What is done, human. The past cannot be changed." Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You are right about that, Chancellor. The past cannot be changed, but the future." He reached into his jacket again. "The future is what we make it, and I have more to show you." He pulled out a second data chip, and the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. "That was what you did to us," Marcus said quietly. "Now let me show you what you made us become." The new holographic displays filled the chamber with images that made several delegates recoil in shock. Marcus watched their reactions carefully, cataloging which species showed surprise and which showed something else. Fear, perhaps, or recognition. The first image showed a human vessel unlike anything the Council had seen before. Sleek and deadly, it hung in space like a predator waiting to strike. The design incorporated elements that should not exist in human technology. Weapons systems that mimicked Korthon plasma cannons. Shield generators based on Vril crystalline matrices. Propulsion systems that borrowed from a dozen different species, all integrated into a single, devastating whole. "This is the UHN's Defiance," Marcus said. "One of 73 ships in Earth's new defense fleet. You may notice certain design elements that seem familiar. That is because we built these vessels using technology we recovered from your Antarctic installation." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Vorn leaned forward, his metallic features frozen in disbelief. You reverse-engineered council technology that is strictly forbidden under the newcomer protocols. Is it? Marcus asked innocently. We reviewed the protocols very carefully, Chancellor. They forbid receiving advanced technology from council members. They say nothing about recovering abandoned technology from our own planet. Technology that was illegally placed there 50,000 years ago without our consent. He gestured, and the hologram shifted to show star charts. Human colonies dotted the map in what appeared to be random expansion. But as Marcus highlighted certain locations, a pattern emerged. Each colony was positioned near a critical piece of council infrastructure. Communication relays, resource depots, military installations. You accused us of unauthorized expansion, Marcus continued. We prefer to call it strategic positioning. Every colony we established was chosen for maximum tactical advantage. We did not expand randomly. We expanded with purpose. A delegate from an insectoid species stood abruptly. This is a declaration of hostile intent. The human admits to preparing for war against the Council? No, Marcus corrected. We prepared for war against anyone who might threaten Earth. After discovering what was done to our world, we decided that our survival could not depend on the mercy of species who saw us as experimental subjects. So we did what we were designed to do. We adapted. The star charts expanded, showing the full extent of human colonial reach. 17 systems, just as the charges stated. But the hologram added new information, layers of data that revealed something the Council had not known. Defensive networks, early warning cyst. EMS, entire fleets hidden in asteroid fields and nebulae. The militarization you object to? Marcus gestured at the displays. That is what you see. What you detect with your scans and surveys? What you report to this council is evidence of human aggression. His smile turned sharp. But that is only what we want you to see. New markers appeared on the star charts. Hidden bases. Camouflaged installations. Entire fleets that had somehow remained undetected by council sensors. The number of human military assets more than quadrupled in the holographic display. The chamber erupted in alarm. Delegates were shouting, some demanding explanations, others calling for immediate military action against Earth. Security drones began moving into attack formations. Marcus held up his hand, and his voice cut through the chaos with unexpected force. Before anyone does something regrettable, you should know one more thing. 3 years ago, we achieved a breakthrough in faster-than-light communication. A system that does not rely on the Council's relay network. A system that operates independently, with perfect encryption and unlimited range. He let that sink in for a moment. For 3 years, we have been listening to all Council communications. Every message sent through your relays. Every classified transmission between Council members. Every secret discussion in chambers like this one. His eyes found Vorn's. We know everything. The Chancellor's metallic form seemed to collapse slightly, the flowing features going still. That is impossible. Our encryption is unbreakable. Your encryption was designed by species who valued complexity over security, Marcus replied. Human cryptographers approach the problem differently. We broke your codes within 6 months. The remaining time we spent listening and learning. He activated a new hologram, this one showing internal council documents. Classified memos marked with the highest security clearances. Minutes from secret meetings. Proposals that had never been made public. We learned that the Council discovered our Antarctic facility 2 years before we did, Marcus said, his voice growing colder. Your survey teams detected the energy signature and realized what it meant. You knew we would eventually find the installation and learn the truth about our origins. He pulled up a specific document, enlarging it so everyone in the chamber could see. This is the Council's internal discussion about what to do when we made that discovery. Option 1. Reveal the truth and accept the political consequences. Option 2. Destroy the facility before we could find it and hope we never learned what was done to us. The document showed vote tallies. Option 2 had won by a narrow margin. You voted to destroy evidence of your crimes, Marcus said. You voted to keep us ignorant? And when that plan failed because our drilling teams reached the installation before your demolition squad arrived, you activated Option 3. Another document appeared. This one made several delegates gasp in horror. Option 3 was the newcomer protocols, Marcus continued. Restrict human expansion. Limit our technology development. Prevent us from becoming powerful enough to challenge the Council. And if we refuse to comply? He highlighted a section of the document. Military intervention. Targeted strikes against Earth's industrial centers. Regime change to install a more cooperative government. And if necessary, complete planetary quarantine. The chamber fell silent. Every eye fixed on Vorn, who had gone completely still on his throne. You were planning to attack my world, Marcus said quietly. Not because we broke any laws, but because we discovered the truth. Because we refused to remain controlled. Vorn finally moved, his features reforming into something resembling a human face. Perhaps an attempt at relatability. Ambassador Webb, you must understand the position the Council was in. The revelation of an old research program could destabilize the entire galactic order. Billions of beings depend on the Council's authority. We had to consider the greater good. The greater good, Marcus repeated. An interesting phrase. Tell me, Chancellor, does the greater good include the proposal to sterilize Earth's population if we proved too difficult to control? He pulled up one final document, and the chamber went deathly quiet. The proposal was there in official Council format. A contingency plan for dealing with humanity if all other options failed. Biological agents designed to render humans infertile over 3 generations. A slow, invisible genocide that would erase humanity from existence while maintaining plausible deniability. This proposal was made 8 months ago, Marcus said, his voice shaking with controlled rage. 8 months ago, while you smiled and negotiated with our diplomats, while you pretended to work toward peaceful integration, your inner circle was discussing how to eliminate my entire species without anyone noticing. A delegate from the lower tiers, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish, spoke up in a trembling voice. Chancellor Vorn, please tell us this is a fabrication. Please tell us the Council did not seriously consider genocide. Vorn did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. The proposal was discussed. It was not approved. Not approved, Marcus said. Not rejected. Not condemned. Simply not approved. Because you wanted to keep it as an option. Just in case. He looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates, seeing shock and horror on faces both alien and strangely familiar. You asked how humanity pleads to your charges. Here's our answer. We refuse to plead to the accusations of criminals. We refuse to bow to the judgment of species who experimented on our ancestors and then tried to cover up their crimes. We refuse to accept restrictions designed not to protect the galaxy, but to protect you from the consequences of your actions. Marcus pulled out one more device from his jacket, and this one made several delegates reach for weapons. It was a signal transmitter small enough to fit in his palm, but every security system in the chamber recognized what it was. This is a dead man's switch, Marcus explained calmly. If I am harmed, killed, or detained, it sends a signal to human vessels positioned throughout the galaxy. Those vessels will then broadcast everything I have shown you today to every species, every planet, every colony in known space. The truth about the genetic experiments, the truth about the Council's conspiracy, the truth about the planned genocide. He smiled. I came here prepared for judgment, Chancellor, but not the judgment you expected to deliver. Alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. The emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in red. And through the transparent dome above, shapes began appearing in space. Human warships, decloaking one by one, their weapons charged and targeting systems locked on the Council station. 20 vessels surrounded the chamber. Then 30. Then 50. Marcus stood calmly in the center of the light. One human against the entire galaxy, and said the words that would change everything. Now, let us discuss what happens next. The red emergency lighting painted the chamber in shades of blood. Vorn rose from his throne, his metallic body reflecting the alarm lights in angry flashes. His voice, when it came, carried a tremor that might have been rage or might have been fear. This is an act of war, human. You bring weapons into council space. You threaten this assembly. You leave us no choice but to respond with force. Marcus did not flinch. Is it? I brought no weapons into this chamber, Chancellor. I brought truth. The warships you see outside, they detected the neural suppression field you activated the moment I entered this room. A field designed to make me compliant, suggestible, easier to control during your judgment. The murmurs that followed confirmed what Marcus already knew. Not every delegate had been aware of the suppression field. Vorn had activated it without full council approval. The field is standard security protocol, Vorn protested. It ensures violent individuals cannot harm the assembly. It ensures that inconvenient individuals cannot speak freely, Marcus corrected. But here is something interesting about humans, Chancellor. That genetic modification your predecessors performed 50,000 years ago. It made us highly resistant to most forms of neural manipulation. Your suppression field gave me nothing worse than a mild headache.
Apt.
He tapped his temple. We are immune to your compliance technology. Just like we proved immune to the dozen other subtle control methods the Council employs. Pheromone manipulation, subsonic suggestion, electromagnetic mood regulation. All standard tools in your diplomatic arsenal. All completely ineffective on humans. A new delegate spoke up. This one from a species Marcus identified as the Talvok. They resembled upright walking mantises, with delicate features and large, multifaceted eyes. Ambassador Webb, if what you say is true about the genetic experiments, does this mean humans were designed to be resistant to control? That is exactly what it means, Marcus confirmed. The Viril Corthon and Silicate species did not modify my ancestors to make us better at farming or hunting. They modified us to create something very specific. He pulled up new data. Medical scans and genetic analyses that told a story written in DNA. They increased our aggression response, but paired it with enhanced impulse control. They boosted our physical capabilities while improving our ability to endure pain. They accelerated our cognitive development, but specifically enhanced our tactical and strategic thinking. They made us heal faster, adapt quicker, and survive environments that would kill most galactic species. The Talvok. Delegates' eyes widened in recognition. They were creating soldiers, as Marcus said simply. My entire species was designed to be biological weapons. The ultimate warriors. Fast, smart, adaptable, and impossible to control through normal means. Vorn attempted to interrupt, but Marcus spoke over him. And before you deny it, Chancellor, we found the original project files in your Antarctica installation. The program was called Sentinel. Its stated purpose was to create defensive forces capable of confronting an existential threat to the Council. The chamber went very still. Several of the older delegates, those whose species predated most others in the room, exchanged glances heavy with meaning. Marcus noticed. So it is true. There was a threat. An ancient Vril delegate rose, its crystalline form pulsing with light that seemed dimmer than the others of its kind. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that suggested great age. 53,000 years ago, we detected signals from beyond the galactic rim. Communications that suggested an invasion fleet of unprecedented size. A force that had consumed 17 galaxies before turning toward ours. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Younger species, those who had joined the Council in recent millennia, had never heard this story. We prepared for war, the ancient Vril continued. Every species contributed to the defense effort, but our analysts predicted we would lose. The enemy had technology centuries beyond our own, numbers that dwarfed our combined populations. We needed something they would not expect, something they could not predict or counter. Biological weapons, Marcus supplied. Species engineered specifically for warfare. Fast developing, rapidly adapting, expendable. The word hung in the air like an accusation. We seeded 47 death worlds, the Vril elder said. Planets with harsh conditions that would force rapid evolution. We introduced genetic modifications to promising species, then withdrew to observe. Most experiments failed. The species destroyed themselves or were destroyed by their environments. But a few succeeded beyond our expectations. Humans were one, Marcus said. Who were the others? The virile elder gestured, and a new hologram appeared. 15 different species, all classified as extinct in the current galactic database. They thrived at first, developed space travel, built weapons, became exactly what we needed them to become. A pause. Then the threat we prepared for never materialized. The signals stopped. The invasion fleet, if it ever existed, turned away or was destroyed by unknown forces, and we were left with a problem. 15 species of biological weapons with no war to fight, Marcus finished. What did you do to them? The silence was answer enough. The Talvok delegate spoke, its voice hollow. You killed them. You exterminated species you created because they were no longer useful. We contained them, Vorn interjected, his voice defensive. We offered peaceful integration. Most refused. They were too aggressive, too militaristic. They would have destabilized the galactic order. So you wiped them out, Marcus said flatly. And when humans developed space travel, when we reached for the stars faster than you anticipated, you tried to do the same to us. The newcomer protocols were not about integration. They were about containment while you decided whether we were worth keeping or whether we needed to be eliminated like the others. A new voice entered the conversation. This one from the Silicate Conclave section. The Silicate representative resembled a collection of animated stones, each one glowing with internal heat. Humans were different from the other Sentinel species. You developed philosophy alongside warfare, art alongside weapons. You created music, literature, complex social structures. You showed capacity for more than just violence. And that made us harder to justify killing, Marcus said. So you delayed. You debated. You tried to find ways to control us instead. But we kept advancing too fast, kept refusing to comply. And eventually, some of you decided the risk was too great. He gestured to the documents still floating in the holographic displays. Hence the sterilization proposal. A slow death instead of a quick one. More humane, you've probably told yourselves. More ethical than simply bombing us back to the Stone Age. Delegates throughout the chamber were turning on each other now, accusations flying between species. The younger civilizations, who had never known about the Sentinel program, were confronting the older ones who had kept the secret. Alliances that had stood for millennia were fracturing in real time. Marcus watched it all with cold satisfaction. Then he raised his voice again. But here's what you did not anticipate. Humans may have been designed as weapons, but we chose to be something more. We chose cooperation over conquest, exploration over exploitation. We built a civilization that valued creativity and compassion alongside strength and strategy. He looked directly at Vorn. You created us to be destroyers. We became builders instead, and that is why you fear us. Not because we are violent, but because we prove that your experiment succeeded in ways you never intended. We are everything you designed us to be, and everything you never imagined we could become. The dead man's switch in his hand pulsed with a soft light. Outside, more human warships continued to decloak. The count reached 70, 80, 100. So here are humanity's terms, Marcus said, his voice carrying absolute certainty. Not requests. Not negotiations. Terms. Vorn's features cycled rapidly, displaying emotions Marcus could not fully interpret. But the Chancellor said nothing, waiting. First, Marcus began, all newcomer protocols regarding Earth are nullified immediately. Humanity will be treated as a full member of the galactic community with all associated rights and privileges. The 3 species involved in the Sentinel program will provide complete technology transfers to Earth, not as gifts, but as reparations for what was done to our world and our people. Third, Earth receives a permanent seat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights. We will have a voice in all decisions that affect the galaxy. Fourth, the Council will publicly acknowledge the Sentinel program and establish laws. preventing genetic experimentation on any species, anywhere, for any reason. Fifth, we receive full access to all Council archives regarding Earth, the Sentinel program, and the threat that prompted its creation. Paused. Letting the terms settle over the Assembly, comply with these demands. And the evidence I have gathered remains classified. Refuse, and every species in the galaxy learns what you did, what you became, what you are still willing to do to maintain power. Marcus looked around the chamber one final time. You wanted weapons? You got guardians. Now choose whether we guard alongside you or against you. The chamber remained silent for a long moment after Marcus finished speaking. Vorn stood motionless on his throne, his metallic features frozen in an expression somewhere between fury and calculation. Around the tiers, delegates conferred in hushed whispers, their forms huddling together as they processed the ultimatum that had just been delivered. Finally, Vorn spoke. You ask for the impossible. Human. The Council cannot simply grant permanent seats based on threats and coercion. There are procedures, protocols that have governed galactic politics for millions of years. Protocols you have broken repeatedly, Marcus countered. Procedures you ignored when you voted to experiment on my ancestors. When you decided to hide the Sentinel program. When you discussed sterilizing my species. He gestured at the documents still floating in the holographic displays. You speak of rules while violating every principle those rules were meant to protect. A voice rose from the lower tiers, the Talvok delegate who had spoken earlier. Her name, Marcus had learned from his briefing materials, was Ambassador Rena. Chancellor Vorn, with respect, perhaps we should consider the humans' terms. What was done to Earth was unconscionable. If these accusations are true, then humanity deserves compensation and representation. If they are true, another delegate stood, this one from an aquatic species, whose translation came through as bubbling sounds. The Vril Elder already confirmed the Sentinel program's existence. The biosignature evidence proves which species were involved. What part of this remains in question? More delegates began standing, adding their voices to the growing chorus. Not all supported Earth, but enough questioned the Council's actions that Vorn could no longer simply dismiss the challenge. Marcus watched the political dynamics shift in real time. The Council was fracturing exactly as he had hoped. The younger species, those admitted to the galactic community in recent millennia, had never known about the Sentinel program. They felt betrayed by the older civilizations who had kept such dark secrets. And even among the founding species, not all had been part of the inner circle that made the most horrific decisions. Vorn raised his hands, calling for silence. This assembly will not be dictated to by military threats. Ambassador Webb, your warships may surround this station, but the Council commands fleets that number in the thousands. If you force conflict, humanity will lose. Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Will we, Chancellor? I owed you 100 ships. Let me show you what else we brought. He activated a new signal, and the holographic display shifted to show a tactical map of the entire sector. Human warships appeared on the display, not just around the Council station, but scattered throughout known space. At every major Council world, near every critical infrastructure point, positioned at strategic choke points in the hyperspace lanes. The count kept rising. 200 ships. 400. 600. Impossible, Vorn breathed. Human, industrial capacity cannot support a fleet of that size. Our intelligence reports showed no more than 73 vessels. Your intelligence saw what we wanted you to see, Marcus replied. For 3 years, while we listened to your communications, we also built in secret, mining asteroids in unclaimed space, establishing shipyards and systems your surveys never thoroughly explored, using the technology we recovered from Antarctica to accelerate our construction capabilities. He pulled up production data that made several delegates gasp. Humans had not just reverse-engineered Council technology, they had improved it. Streamlined manufacturing processes that took Council species decades were completed by humans in months. Ships that required massive crews to operate had been redesigned for smaller, more efficient human teams. We learned from you, Marcus said. Every species in this chamber contributed something to human advancement. Vril, energy systems. Korthon, metallurgy. Silicate, computational matrices. We studied your technology, understood your principles, and made them our own. A Korthon delegate, younger than the one who had spoken earlier, rose to its feet. This is exactly what we feared. This is why containment protocols existed. Humans advance too quickly. You learn too fast. Given unrestricted access to galactic technology, you will surpass us all within generations. And that terrifies you, Marcus observed. Not because we will destroy you, but because you will no longer be able to control us. Because the weapons you created have become equals you must negotiate with, rather than subjects you can command. Rena spoke again, her multifaceted eyes fixed on Vorn.
Chancellor.
I move that we vote on the humans' terms. Each point separately, allowing the full council to decide rather than leaving this to the inner circle that has clearly acted without our knowledge or consent. I second that motion, the aquatic delegate added. As do I, came a voice from the gaseous species section. More and more delegates added their support. Vorn looked around the chamber, seeing control slipping from his grasp. Finally, he nodded. Very well, we will vote. But Ambassador Webb, you must power down your weapons and withdraw your fleet during deliberations. No, Marcus said simply. My ships remain exactly where they are until the votes are complete and humanity's terms are accepted. Non-negotiable. Vorn's features cycled through a dozen expressions before settling on resignation. Then let us proceed. The votes came quickly. The first term nullifying the newcomer protocols passed with 70% approval. The younger species voted unanimously in favor, joined by several older civilizations, who recognized the protocols had been corrupted from their original purpose. The second term. Technology reparations from the three guilty species passed more narrowly. The Vril, Korthon, and Silicate delegates abstained, but enough other voices supported compensation that the measure carried. The third term. Granting Earth a permanent council seat sparked the fiercest debate. Several species argued that humanity had not earned such a position through cultural contribution or diplomatic service. But Rena countered that no species had earned the right to be genetically manipulated without consent, and that humanity's persistence in the face of such violations demonstrated exactly the kind of resilience and strength the Council claimed to. Valued. The vote passed. Barely, but it passed. The fourth and fifth terms. Public acknowledgement and archive access met less resistance. Too many delegates were already demanding answers about the Sentinel program. Making the information public and available seemed a reasonable price for transparency. When the final vote was tallied, Vorn descended from his throne. He approached Marcus in the center of the chamber, and for the first time they stood on equal ground. The Council has accepted your terms, Vorn said quietly. Humanity will be granted full membership with a permanent seat. The crimes committed against Earth will be acknowledged. Reparations will be provided. He paused. I hope you understand what you have done here today, Ambassador Webb. You have changed the galactic order. Nothing will be the same. Good, Marcus replied. The old order was built on secrets and lies. Perhaps the new one will be better. Vorn turned and walked back to his throne. This session is concluded. Ambassador Webb, you will be contacted with details regarding your council seat assignment and reparation schedules. Marcus nodded, deactivating his deadman switch. Outside, the human warships began to power down their weapons, though they did not withdraw. A show of trust, but only so much. As delegates began filing out of the chamber, Rena approached Marcus. That was quite a performance, Ambassador. You came prepared for war but fought with words instead. Words backed by overwhelming force, Marcus acknowledged. But yes, we could have attacked. Could have tried to take by violence what we gained through revelation. But that would have made us the monsters they feared we would become. And now we see if the Council keeps its word. If reparations are delivered and archives opened, if humanity is truly welcomed as equals or merely tolerated as a threat too dangerous to oppose, Rena's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was a Talvok expression of approval. For what it is worth, Ambassador, I believe you did the right thing. Secrets like the Sentinel program poison everything they touch. Better to expose them and deal with the consequences than let them fester. Marcus was about to respond when his communication device vibrated. He glanced at the message, and his expression went completely neutral. Ambassador? Rena asked, noticing the change. Is something wrong? Marcus looked up at the dome above, where stars shone in their billions. I need to speak with Chancellor Vorn immediately. Something has happened. Something that changes everything we just negotiated. He forwarded the message to the Council's central systems. Within seconds, alarms began sounding again. Vorn returned to the chamber floor, his features cycling rapidly. What is this? The Chancellor demanded, looking at the data Marcus had sent. This cannot be accurate. It is, Marcus confirmed. Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network detected the signatures 40 minutes ago. We wanted to confirm before reporting. The confirmation just came through. He pulled up a new holographic display, this one showing the edge of the galaxy. And beyond that edge, moving toward known space, were signals. Thousands of them. Millions. The threat the Sentinel program was designed to counter, Marcus said quietly. It is coming. And it will arrive within 5 years. The chamber erupted in panic and confusion. Delegates demanded explanations, confirmations, tactical analyses. Vorn attempted to restore order, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Marcus stood in the center of it all. Watching the galaxy he had just forced to accept humanity, now faced the very nightmare that had prompted humanity's creation. He thought about the 15 species that had been exterminated after the first threat passed, the biological weapons that proved too dangerous to keep, and he thought about what the Council would do now that those weapons were needed again. You wanted to know if we would be guardians or conquerors, Marcus said, though no one could hear him over the noise. I suppose we are about to find out together. He activated his communication link to Earth's command structure. This is Ambassador Webb. Inform the High Command that first contact with the Council was successful. We have secured full membership and reparations. Pause. Also inform them that the reason for our creation has arrived. Authorization code Gabriel. Activate the Sentinel protocols. In the chaos of the chamber, no one noticed the slight smile that crossed Marcus's Webb's face. Humanity had spent 50,000 years being shaped by forces beyond their control, being molded into weapons they never asked to become. But perhaps, Marcus thought they had been preparing for this moment all along. Every war they had fought among themselves, every challenge they had overcome, every time they had chosen to rebuild rather than surrender, the galaxy had created them to be destroyers. Now, they would prove they could be saviors instead. The stars beyond the galaxy's edge pulsed with incoming signals, and humanity prepared to fulfill the destiny that had been written in their genes before their ancestors learned to speak. The Sentinel program had created Earth's children to fight a war. After 50,000 years, that war had finally come home. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5.